So there's a question that I get quite frequently, and I wanted to make a short little video just to explain the answer to it. And the question I get all the time is there a certification process for service dogs? And the short answer is no, there is not. By the way, if you hear gross sounds in the background, it's my dog eating dinner, so just FYI. Oh, and if you're wondering what's on my hat, it's Spinster Aunt Sarah. That's my Etsy shop. spinsterantsarah.etsy.com if you're interested. But yeah, so service dogs do not have to go through a certification process. There's no test that they need to pass. Sometimes people are thinking of the Canine Good Citizen test, which is put on by the AKC, which Scout and I have passed, but that's not required for her being a service dog. It's not required for a lot of things. It is required as one of the steps to becoming a therapy dog, but it is not for becoming a service dog. Basically, the rules of service dogs all fall under the ADA. And the ADA says that in order to have a service dog, number one, the person needs to have a disability. So they need to have something that under the ADA would impede their regular life functions. So things like going to school, going to work, taking care of themselves, taking care of their hygiene, taking care of their home, like just your everyday life types of things. So if it, affects it to a point of it becoming a problem, basically, it's considered a disability. So one disability that I have is fibromyalgia, and that affects all kinds of things with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And that's just one of my disabilities. And then the other thing the ADA says is that the dog needs to be under control of the handler out in public, basically. And businesses are allowed to ask a service dog to leave if they're destroying property, if they are excessively barking about something, or if they defecate or urinate in public. Businesses are allowed to ask the service dog to leave, but the person is allowed to return without their service dog on the same day, so they can't discriminate against the disabled individual if they leave, take their service dog home, or have somebody watch it and then come back into the store or whatever. There's also a misconception that people think there's some kind of an ID badge or something that service dogs have, and that's not a real thing either. If you see things like that online, on Amazon, like service dog ID tags, those have no legal standing under the ADA. So under the ADA, basically the thing that you need to have a service dog is a disability, and your dog has to behave well and be able to behave in public, and your dog needs to be trained in tasks to assist with the disability. It's always very difficult when somebody says to me like, oh my gosh, like I love dogs and I wish I could take my dog everywhere, because number one, they don't understand how much goes into having a service dog. You have to take care of the dog, you have to have upkeep with training, you have to train them to do tasks, and et cetera, et cetera. And in addition, it's not as easy going somewhere with a service dog. There are constantly people stopping you, people asking you questions, people questioning whether or not you have a disability or what your disability is, and sometimes people will outright ask you, which I find to be really difficult, because that's sort of like asking someone like, why are you in a wheelchair? Or it's also the same as asking someone like, what medications are you on and why are you on them? And just that's very personal to ask a stranger, so like please don't be one of those people. But and they also don't think about like the fact that if someone has a service dog, they also have a disability. So when you're like, oh, I wish I could take my dog everywhere and I wish my dog could be my service dog, what you're basically also saying is, I wish I had a disability too. And it's not easy having a disability. You know, there are so many things in so many places that it's difficult to get accommodations, or you can't get the accessibility you need or should have. So that's always an issue. There's ableism, which is people discriminating against disabled people, whether it's subconscious or conscious. It happens quite frequently. For example, you know, this lady recently, I was out with a friend who also had a service dog, and we both look like very healthy young people. And the lady was like, are these your service dogs? And we were like, yeah. And she was like, you mean there can be service dogs for people like you? People like us? What is that supposed to mean? Like, because we look like we're healthy, we can't have disabilities? So there's a whole other issue with that. But yeah, I mean, to sum up, there's no certification process. Those ID tags are scams and they have no legal standing, and people cannot ask for it. If you work in a business, the only 2 questions you are legally allowed to ask a person when they come in is this a service dog? To which I would answer yes. And what tasks has this service dog been trained to perform? And, you know, I could list a whole list of tasks, but I usually just pick like 2 or 3 so I don't overwhelm a person, because Scout does so much for me. Like, my disabilities are in various categories. So one thing I might say is, you know, she's been trained to help me with my mobility by picking items up off the floor for me. That would be one thing. Or I could say medical alerts, since she alerts to my migraines. And those are the only 2 questions you are allowed to ask if a person comes in. You are not allowed to ask for an ID tag, because those are scams and they don't have any legal standing. They're not legal. They're fake. They're just a waste of money. And you're also not allowed to ask what the person's disability is. You can't ask for certification. It doesn't exist. So, I mean, I understand why people get confused, because they see things like this online, like, oh, get a tag for your service dog, or maybe other people have shown it to them before because they, didn't know any better, or maybe they did know better and they were like faking a service dog. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of confusion out there, but I will put a link in the description of the ADA commonly asked questions about service dogs, because that is a very helpful link. And if you have any questions that I didn't answer, that's a really good place to look. And you're also always welcome to post a comment and I will try to get back to you about it. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to share this video, because it's really important to me to educate the public on all of the correct things with service dog laws, because there's just so much confusion out there. So please share this with anyone you know. Always remember to be kind, and we'll see you next time. Bye.